Let's start us off.
Boozy Spirits with Matt Ray and Justin Grimble.
All right, today, almost tonight, we have Andrew Bernauer.
There you go.
Close?
You got it, man. Good job. You nailed it.
He's been practicing.
I have.
Yeah.
This helps right here, too.
That's right. That's right.
Tell us a little bit about this beautiful bottle of freaking goodness. I'm going to hit it again.
What's the name of it?
Dude, don't get me. Don't get me lying.
So my brand is El Viaje.
Okay.
Which means the journey or the trip in Spanish. That's the brand, but Raicilla is the type of spirit. So that's the category, if you will, just like we have tequila, mezcal, some people know about sotals, bacanores, etc. So Raicilla is its own category. But it's really new to the U.S. It got legalized to export in 2019. That's when it got its denomination of origin. So if you think about it, this is, kind of 5 years now, just available. Other than that, it's always been kind of a local thing in that region of Mexico. It was just, local villages, et cetera, made it. It was part of their tradition for hundreds of years, but it just never got legalized. They never structured it that way. And a big part of it was they didn't want to pay taxes. So if you go back to when Spain colonized Mexico, that's the first thing they do is tax alcohol, right? That's where the government gets their money from. So these guys were kind of cowboys and rebels, and they just stayed against that for so long. But now they've realized, hey, we can introduce this to the world. We can get in global markets, all these things. So that's where this has kind of developed. And that's just where I kind of discovered it and fell in love with it. And, it's very unique for an agave spirit. It fits a profile that, tequila drinkers may want more flavor. Mezcal might overwhelm people. So this is kind of like an in-between, if you will, that people can try out.
I've always heard with the Raicilla, that was like when we talking about the taxes, that it means like the little root. And that was like their kind of loophole to get around the government. Like, we're not using the piña, we're using the root, so it's not spirits.
That's right. So Raicilla means little root in Spanish. So what they did was they said, well, this is medicinal. It's not an alcohol. So that's kind of how they avoided it as well. And hence where the name comes from.
Sound like they were Mexican moonshiners, basically.
That's what they say. And it's kind of like they did. And, they refined the craft. It's just, I guess I don't use that as much because people think moonshine is like bad quality. And, because this is a complex spirit. And it's really, when you look at the flavor profile, it's a lot going on with it. And especially the more you get into it, it's got citrus notes, it's got some vanilla.
Some florals.
The floral, the nose is very unique on it. There's two categories of Raicillas. So there's coastals and mountain Raicillas, and you'll taste a big difference in those. Okay. So the coastals come from kind of like around Puerto Vallarta to that area. They're all wild-sourced agaves. They're different species. You'll see different ones. But they're very like blue cheese, funky, acidic. That's great. Some people like that, but you got to have an acquired palate for it, right? And also they just can't produce a lot because they're sourcing these agaves wild. It's just, they can only do so much. So coastals are great. Mountain Raicillas, that's what mine is. Okay. So this comes from a region called Moscota. That's predominantly what you'll hear. In Moscota, it's in the Sierra Madre Occidental Mountains there. It's a town. This is just part of their history. They've always done it. All the main Raicileros that I met, kind of local legends and everything, that's kind of the town they're out of. And they have different farms around there. And that's where they produce their Raicilla and source the agaves and everything. So,
and how'd you get started doing that?
Oh, man.
I know that's not your day job, right?
It's not. But so my background at the time, I've always done it's called sales engineer. We can just say that as the title. So I did a lot of consulting and engineering for distilleries. So like Jack Daniels, George Dickel, the Diageo up in Tullahoma, a lot of those are my biggest customers. So I was very familiar with the industry, and I kind of always wanted to do an alcohol brand. It was a dream for a long time. I was a huge bourbon fan. I still think bourbons are amazing. There's great ones, but when you look at it in the industry and then you kind of see behind the curtain, right, like a lot of the bourbons all come from a few major distilleries, and then it's just all getting private label. Maybe they'll do some finishings, things of that nature, but MGP, so forth, they're producing the majority of these brands. And so there wasn't a lot of creativity to it, if you will. And also it was just such a hard space to get into.
So many of them.
Yeah, I couldn't tell you how many. So just to break this down, when you looked into the agave spirits, right now there's roughly, I think, 1,600 tequila brands. There's, I want to say, around 450 mezcal brands, which mezcal is trending right now. With Raicilla, there's roughly 25 of us. And then out of those 25, how many people can really scale and grow it? because some people found Raicilla. They said, "Oh, this is great. I love it." And they found one down there. They found a producer they like, and they didn't realize that his farm can only produce maybe 500 or 1,000 liters. That's 1 or 2 pallets. That's barely enough to handle one state.
Yeah.
How are you going to go national with that? So, it's great. There's amazing ones out there, but there's not a lot of Raicilla brands, if you will. And that's kind of where, for a small guy like me, it helps out. I mean, I'm going against the big monsters and the billion-dollar companies and all those things, and they kind of control a lot of it. But at least this creates some leveling of the playing field, if you will,
So you just go down to Mexico and hit some different distilleries and try to find somebody that you clicked with, basically?
Yeah, it's kind of like a movie. We don't have to get into that with Johnny Depp. But I literally went down there and so I hooked up with some people in California that had some connections down there. Didn't know them. I mean, I was just randomly. So this kind of all happened during COVID.
Okay.
So my career kind of took like a hiatus, if you will. Things were dead. And I was kind of like, man, what am I doing with my life? What am I passionate about? I used to play music. That was my thing.
Okay, cool.
So I needed a creative outlet. I was doing artwork. And I was like, well, I like alcohol. I like learning about spirits. This is what I do for a living. Maybe I can tie that in creatively, et cetera. That's when I started getting into agave stuff. But long story short, I just started calling up people. Anybody that would talk to me, most people thought I was crazy. And then I finally, found them. They were like, oh, we know some people down there. So literally hopped on a plane, didn't know them, first time meeting. And then we drive like hours into the mountains. And like where my Raicilla produces, it's, I want to say about 45 minutes on like dirt mountain roads to get to where his farm is.
Dang.
So it's like, your GPS isn't really going to take you there, and I was like trusting my friends to make sure. Yeah. And she was like, I think we're going the right way. And I was like, I hope so, because I don't have a clue where we are. But yeah, I just went down there and it was really cool. We had one event one day at Manuel Salcedo Rios' house. He's kind of like the godfather. He's one of the main Raicelleros, makes amazing product in Mascota, and he's been doing it for a long time. But at his house, all the local Raicelleros came over. Everybody brought a bottle, and we just had this big long table, and then I was just sampling one after the other because they were like all bringing it out, because it was up to me to decide which one I wanted to go with, right? And Benito Salcedo Rios, who is my Raicillero, he was one of the youngest ones. I want to say he was in his early 30s at the time. I mean, that's very young to be mastering your craft. But he just had an excellent product. I really fell in love with his. The other ones were great, and they vary a lot. But I fell in love with his, and so we kind of worked out the partnership. Awesome. And visited his, Taberna, his distillery, went out to his farm and everything. Another interesting thing, just from my background, like I know things can change in finishing and stuff. So when I went out there, we literally, I drank it directly off the still. So that was like 190 proof or something like that. But I was like, I want to make sure, the flavor profile and everything matches what's in the bottle. So it was a really cool experience. But yeah, I met with everybody locally, and then just kind of made the decision from there. And, it was a cool experience. It was wonderful.
How long of a process once you decided to go with him to get it to the U.S. to actually be able to sell?
Sure. So that was maybe a little quicker, but all at that same time, I was having to go through the government regulations. You got to get TTB permits, background checks, all these things, insurances. It was 2 to 3 years before I was ready to launch. And that's another thing. COVID afforded me the time to do that. There's pitfalls in it. I mean, like you might find a lawyer that says, oh, yeah, I know what to do, and blah, 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 and then all your paperwork's incorrect. You got to start over. Yeah, a lot of this stuff I wound up just figuring out how to do myself. But it's a long process to get it going. And then right now in the market, I'm coming up on September, will be 2 years. In the market and expanded out to other states. So it's going well, but it's, there's the challenge with this because nobody knows what Raicilla is.
Right.
There's so much education required with it too.
Yeah. It's not something you're just going to pick off the shelf just for the hell of it. Like, kind of have to know what you're looking for.
Yeah. And once I've done events and you educate people and we make cocktails, people love it. It's just, there's a lot of work to be done. That's why I'm just on the road a lot, constantly doing things.
Which the label definitely helps. That's a cool label.
Thank you so much.
Eye catching. So you want to, if you're going and looking at all kind of stuff, it stands out for sure.
Exactly. And that was one of the things when I did this. I said if I was going to do this, I wanted everything to be a work of art, from the, the label to the juice inside to everything. I wanted it to be all perfect. And that's where, so I did the artwork for the label, like on a canvas in my house at the time, and then came up with a name for the brand, all those things. So I had all that just like on a painting canvas, took it to a graphic designer. because I couldn't afford to pay anybody to do it. I mean, I had an artist down there I wanted to use, and it was, going to be expensive and everything. So I was like, well, let me do this. And then it's kind of like writing music. I got to have like a creative contribution to it, so it makes it that much more rewarding.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
So
You don't want to just throw the money and let everybody else do all the work, and it's your brand, but you had nothing to do with it. Like, that's not fun.
Then it's not authentic, and that's been the challenge for me too. It's like some people launching brands, they can, go out and get all these investors and get tons of money and stuff, but then you just traded one job for another, and you really don't have any say. Yeah. I've got my work cut out for me. It's like I'm an independent artist, if you will, but at least I can have that artistic direction. So.
That's a good way to put it, because you're having to go to events and shows like a band would to try to get somebody to pick you up, basically.
Exactly. and seriously, I mean, like, so I'm here today. I had events and meetings earlier in the week in Birmingham. I'll be in Atlanta towards the end of the week, and then fly to a festival in Miami this weekend. So, and then, you balance that with a day job. I have a child half the time as well. I mean, it never stops. But I love it. There's nothing that I do with this that feels like work, and to me, and I grew up as a kid, that was my dream, was to be a musician. I grew up in the Muscle Shoals area, so it's like deep music history there, and grew up playing music. So this is kind of like my, I don't mind getting out on the road.
Yeah, your creative outlet for it.
Yeah, and I like being on the road. I like doing it. It's just, you can get exhausted. I mean, think about it. It's just like musicians. Like, it's fun, but it's still a job. It's still a grind, and you have to have sleep eventually, and things like that. So
that's how it is. Us doing the podcast, because we both have jobs and businesses to run, and this is just for fun. Like, enjoy doing it.
Yeah, and you hope things grow and turn into something, but you have to put that work in, and a lot of people don't realize what it takes, and then on top of that, they just don't want to, have to dedicate that. And that's what I tell people with anything. I mean, this is fun. There's a million things you can do, but just make sure you're passionate about it, because nothing's easy. Especially when you're against. It's kind of like trying to make it big in anything. When you've got big competition with lots of money and all that stacked against you, you've really got to work hard to push at it.
Yeah, so. And this is the only one in the state, right?
Raicilla in Alabama. Yep. Exactly.
Yeah, because I think it was Mayowell in Birmingham had it. I went up there one night. Then I was like, it's not on ABC list or nothing. That's when we were doing jalapenos downtown. I'm like, the hell? How do they have something I don't have? Yeah. And I was like, they probably got it illegally or something, And somebody's like, I looked online. I was like, no, it's through Alabama. I'm like, okay, so it's not just something they bought out of state.
Right.
So that's what I think. I messaged Andrew just blindly on Instagram, told him what I was doing. He wrote me back. Was like, oh, go through this person or whatever to be able to get it, and we ended up getting it downtown.
Yeah, and so that's where I had the launch party, was at Mayowell, which went great. And the local kind of a cocktail establishments in Birmingham were the first, and that was easy. That's my backyard. That's what you need to do. But no, it's in the ABC system. It's strange. We definitely don't need to get into that, rabbit hole. But it's they list it as like, I think, like an allocated product or a CGPO.
CGPO. That's what it is. Yeah. So it's not listed, but if you know who it's through, so it's through Ashley. She does it. Mad Vines.
Mad Vines, exactly. So all the restaurants have to let me know or her know, and then she prepares the order, and then whatever ABC warehouse you pick it up. But it's not like in their catalog, so people are like, well, we can't find your product. We can't order it. I'm like, it exists.
That's why I was like, I know it's somehow. That's why I was like, I'm going to find it, because I was determined to have as many as I possibly could. That's why I think you brought the first case to me at the ABC. Then now I've just been going through Mad Vines to get it.
Yep.
So I think we're up to 272 now downtown. All the different agaves.
Gotcha. Yeah, I mean, you've got one of the largest collections in Alabama, don't you?
In the South, I think.
Really?
Besides Miami doesn't count. They got they have all 1,500.
Yeah. That's amazing. Especially, I mean, I've been working the Atlanta market now. Excuse me, and there's spots all over there. But to have a massive selection like that is great.
That's why I liked having this one, because it's it's a different one. We had some mescals, but we had nothing else. Yeah. So now I got yours. I got one so tall. I got one of the Bacanora.
Yep.
Got one of those that's in the state.
Yep.
It's like a little 375 bottle. That's all I could find.
Yeah, I forget that brand. It's good. And there's a few Bacanoras that are good. Most of them are real vegetal and earthy. They don't, kind of vary in flavor as much. So like with Raicilla, this one is, the agave species is 100% agave maximiliana. And it has a real kind of fruity, citrusy flavor profile more than some of the others. There's other species they use, but with the Raicillas, you get a lot of flavor variations. Some of the other, like the Bacanora from the Sonora region, it's just more concentrated. I think it's just a couple species, so you don't really get a lot of differences in it. The other cool thing with Raicilla, and if you get into the distillation process, it's the wild fermentation part of it. You guys heard of that or familiar with that?
Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, so if you think about like when we make whiskey, okay, like at J. Daniel's, you cook your mash, your grains, and then once they're cooked and then the sugars are created, then you got to ferment that. And you'll see all the fermentation tanks and they're boiling and bubbling and stuff. And what they do is they take the grains with the sugar, they put yeast in, the yeast consumes the sugar, that's creates the alcohol in essence. And then that's when it gets ready to be distilled. Well, with Raicilla, they don't put any specific yeast in there. So just like the bacteria in the air, those microbes, everything, that's what ferments their agaves once they cook them. So my, Raicilla's farm, his livestock, everything in that little area, that's what ferments these agaves and creates a flavor profile because it's not a controlled yeast.
Yeah.
So that's
So it can change it.
Oh, yeah.
Depending on.
So I go to another Raicilla's farm and his flavor profile is completely different just from that fermentation process. And again, like with whiskey, because it's so kind of controlled, commercialized, they're going to put, like if Jim Beam, they brag about they've had the same yeast strain for hundreds of years, in a refrigerator or something. So they control that yeast strain. They always put that same one in there. With Raicilla, it varies by the Raicilla spot. So it's kind of like terroir with wine. Like each one tastes very different. So I thought that was really cool and unique about it as well. And that's when you get into the artisan spirits, the handmade stuff. And you're getting out of that commercialized realm, which nothing against it. That was my background. I just thought this was really beautiful because to me, this is kind of like a work of art, what these guys are doing.
For sure.
And it's kind of like if you go to a restaurant, you could get something that's, I'm not going to say fast food, but, kind of pre-made and, preservatives and things of that nature. Or you can get something kind of made from scratch on a, homemade, wood-fired grill. This is what this product is more. It's more made from scratch.
And the place there, how you say it again? The Raicilla? Not the Raicilla, the distillery. What's the word for it?
Taberna is what they call
Taberna. So, does he have the ability to grow bigger as your brand grows, or
he
like
does.
You mentioned earlier?
He does, and so that was a big part of me choosing my Raicilla was because
Raicilla, that's what I was thinking. Raicilla.
So like Raicilla is the the Maestro Raicilla, the person making it, just like Mescalero, Tequilero, all those things. But he has the capacity, like a lot of the other Raicella's actually rent land from him. He's got a family generational farm they've had forever. It's massive, and I can show you guys some pictures. So, we can do very large volumes to scale up, whereas a lot of people can't. So, not only did I like his flavor profile, but you've got to think about that infrastructure-wise. Yeah. And I guess my background, it helped a little bit on that, knowing that, and maybe I just got lucky too. But that's where a lot of people will kind of strike out in this because they'll find a product that's good. Yeah. So that's a big thing with grow. Like Bacanora will always be wild sourced agaves. There's really no way they can harvest them. Just kind of the way it's structured. They're getting into it, but for the most part, so it's just limited capacity, right? So they can only produce so much. But no, he's got the family generational farm, so he's got a lot planted. And they have to be 8 to 10 years old to have the right sugar content. So you've got to really start on that early. And I have to give him forecast, and we have to plan, and none of that's perfect, but. He's got the infrastructure, and that's a big help.
I'm sure it probably helped his family and everything too, hooking up with you and getting it out there more.
Yeah, and that's the thing
that's
is,
cool.
Some people are like, well, how'd you get involved in this, and why do you have this brand and different things? And I'm just like, well, first of all, this is something I love and I'm passionate about, and I went down there and tried to learn about the community and be a part of it. But the other thing is we're kind of creating an industry together. These Raicilleros, they're amazingly talented, they're artists. But we here can be the conduit that then gets their product in stores where they can make more money for their families and have an industry, instead of just being locally sold in their little areas, now they've got nationwide possible expansion. So it helps everyone, I think it's a positive.
That's really cool.
So what kind of cocktails would you make with this, or what's popular?
Sure. So anything that gin goes into has been really popular with it. So like Last Word, Naked and Famous, all those type cocktails. People have been putting in a martini. So like Adios in Birmingham, they put it in a martini. I think they cut it with tequila, but the Raicilla was definitely in there. And then I think he got an award in like Food and Wine magazine in 2022 for like best cocktail of the year. So that was very creative to put it in a martini as well. I love it in a Negroni, if you're a Negroni fan, because that's traditionally used with gin. So this gives like a little citrus, a little agave element to it but not a ton, and it's still delicate and balanced. I think that goes amazing with it. So I've done a lot of Negronis with it. You know, the ranch waters, we call it mountain water. We kind of rebranded that, but that's just something simple, you know, refreshing, easy.
It's kind of the version we did jalapenos. We did the spirit, soda water, lime, and strawberry.
Yeah, exactly.
Called Pretty Little Liar.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like a ranch water, but a little sweeter.
Yeah,
People love it.
And for a summer drink too,
Oh,
like
yeah.
it's perfect. Exactly.
And people always like, what is Raicilla?
Yeah.
You have to explain it to them, and they love it.
Yep, exactly.
I guess it brings out the strawberry, brings out the citrus, and kind of blends well together with it.
Yeah, anything where some brightness can come through, I think goes really, really well with it. And I mean, I've seen people do a little bit of everything with it, and they keep exploring, and that's cool too, because as a new product, bartenders are interested in it, right? You know, they like to explore and play with things, and so, you know, they're constantly doing creative things that I'm blown away by and just learning more and more. But the versatility of it, I think, helps also as far as getting in the market. The challenge with it is, you know, sourcing it. First of all, I have to pay my people in Mexico, you know, the right prices, you know, for their labor and everything. By the time I do that, and it's all handmade, artisan, et cetera, it's hard to have much profit margin, right? So it's hard and that's what people are like, oh, yeah, you know, they ask about the price. Well, you can't get a handmade artisan agave product for $20 on the shelf.
Yeah.
It's not going to work. The economics don't equate that way. So the challenge is getting it at a price point where, you know, everybody's paid fairly and, you know, all those things, but yet the bars still have a chance to get it in a cocktail because they have to justify that as well. So that's kind of, but if you think about it, cocktails overall, I mean, the prices have went up and they have to. I mean, everything has went up.
Everything.
And, you know, and I've got some bars that they're just so upset. Like, we used to charge $8-10 for a cocktail. And I'm like, I know it, but those days are gone.
Yeah, you can't.
Yeah. And it's not just about this. It's your aperitifs. It's everything has went up in price. So that's just, and honestly, all the cities I go to, I don't really see people complaining about paying $16, $18, $20 for a quality cocktail.
Yeah, you don't.
Because it's work of art, and, you know, that's what people kind of expect to pay. So that's been a little bit of a challenge, and that's why I try to retail. My goal when I started this was to try to retail around, like, kind of competing against like a Casamigos, you know, like I guess what you could deem as a somewhat quality tequila, but still very commercialized, et cetera. And then have, you know, a unique artisan product like this, but still be at a price point that people could afford. For sure. It wasn't just out of reach. Yeah. Because if you try retailing at $80 or $90 a bottle, it's going to sit on a back shelf in a bar, collect dust. Maybe a few people that know it will, you know,
pick it up back there.
Try it out, but you're never going to do volume, and then the brand can't survive. You've got to get it on some cocktail list, and you got to get it moving in, you know, off-premise in, you know, retail stores too, and get the stores to push it as well.
I was surprised with on the ABC that the illegal mezcal, they did away with that in Alabama now.
They stopped carrying it?
Yeah.
Really?
It was one of my best brands downtown. I sold cases of it. And they deleted it from the system a few months ago.
I wonder if illegal pulled out though.
I don't know what happened. Somebody told me there wasn't a big seller in Alabama, even though I was buying a lot of it. So
really,
which sucks because you get people liking it and then they just pull out and like can't get it anymore.
Yeah, and that's the thing too is without getting into it, you know, Alabama's a control state. Yeah. So first off, I know guys that are brand owners that live in like Pennsylvania, right? You know, an amazing guy that owns a lot of tequila brands. He lives there. He's in Philadelphia. He doesn't even sell in his home state because it's a control state. I'm not saying there's anything against a control state, but it depends on how much they tax that product. Yeah. So here in Alabama, you know, it's a 54% tax on the distributor's price. So the distributor marks it up. There's another 54% before you or any other establishment can get it. When you do the economics, it makes it hard for brands to be affordable. So I think that kind of prevents some brands from coming here. I'm not in politics. I can't change that.
Yeah, they said we could have a whole episode on ABC stuff.
I don't know. Don't put my name in it. Maybe omit that. I don't know. But I mean, we're following the rules. It's just,
sure. Yeah, you just.
I feel like with illegal, that could be some of the situation. Is some brands are just like, well, hey, you know, it's putting me at such a price point.
Could be.
I don't want to be, so I'm just going to exit and put my marketing dollars in other markets.
That's what some of the people that used to drink the illegal, the Blanco, I've been telling them about yours. Like, try this one out. It's a little different, but it's similar, and they've loved it too.
Have they? That's awesome. That's awesome. Yeah, and like I said, it's when I do a lot of tastings, a lot of people that are tequila fans are like scared to try it because they're like, oh, I don't like mezcal. I don't like mezcal. Like, this is not a mezcal technically. You know, this is a Raicilla. It's different. And like we said earlier, the biggest thing is, so with mezcal, they cook the agaves like underground in the earthen pits. You know, they'll put them underground, cover them with coal ash, etc. That's how they get so smoky. They get soaked up. Whereas with this, they've got these adobe mud brick ovens. They throw firewood in the bottom, the agaves in the top, seal it with mud, cook it for 3 days. So you're still cooking it with firewood. There's a little bit of smoke, but it's not like cooking it underground with mezcal. So that's where
cool.
it doesn't have that smoky, flavor profile.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, yeah.
It's one of those things like when you first try it, you're like, this is weird.
Yeah.
Then you sip it more and like, I know Matt keeps on pouring. There's more.
Yeah,
Like,
I mean,
it grows on you.
It's complex on the flavors.
It is.
I mean, it really is. And
Yep.
each time you can almost taste something different.
Yep. Yeah, and it kind of depends on like
impressive.
what you're doing before. Like sometimes you might get a little more peppery notes on the front end, and then sometimes you just get a ton of citrus blast, and it just really depends. The other thing with this one, and I think coming from my bourbon background, like I like a viscosity as well. You know, to me, a quality spirit has some viscosity. And of course, this being 88 proof, it's gonna have more because it's not cut with as much water. But I really like the viscosity and the mouthfeel of this too. I really enjoyed that.
I can tell on the glass, all the tears and the crown still just sitting there. It hadn't completely disappeared yet.
Yep. So that's kind of where I really kind of fell in love with this one. But yeah, it's unique. It's gone great. I mean, I'm very grateful for Alabama. I think people thought I was crazy to launch, really anything in Alabama. But on top of that, a Raicilla that nobody's even heard of, like in other states. I mean, I go to Georgia, and most people over there still aren't familiar with it.
Well, you'd probably have more success with this than trying to do a bourbon because there's so many of them.
Well, that's the same thing with tequila.
Yeah,
so
tequila, so many.
Yeah, that was the one piece of advice this gentleman gave me from the tequila space, and he was pretty well known. He had a lot of brands, but he was like, Andrew, you're not a millionaire. You're not a celebrity. He was like, it's saturated.
Yeah.
You don't have much of a chance. He was like, you can go, because I knew like the distiller I wanted to source from, thought I could negotiate a deal, and he was like, there's tons of people sourcing from them already, and unless you're going to commit to huge volumes and you don't have that capital, they're not going to be interested in you. It's just kind of been done already. And then as you see too with the tequila, production, autoclaves are getting used. A lot of these commercialized measures are getting used and so forth. So people are getting kind of educated on tequila now and looking for additive-free products. They're trying to, get more pure tequila products as well. And that's kind of separating it out. But still, it's a monster of an industry that would be very hard for just a random person to get involved in now.
You probably have to work a lot harder to get your name out there.
Or have a lot of money, too.
Yeah.
And even then, what's to say it's going to work? I mean, all these celebrities are popping up stuff, and nothing against that, but who's to say it's a good spirit, right? Just because a celebrity's on it, that doesn't mean I'm going to enjoy it. I mean,
But that's what the mass people like, though. Like, it's amazing how many people love Patron.
I know.
They'll come downtown or any of my restaurants, like, give me Patron. Like, try this, try that. Patron's the best. I want Patron. Like, it's really not. Try this one.
That's why I'd be like, have you had Tapatio? Have you had G4?
They don't want to try any of that stuff.
Tequila Ocho? Yeah.
I wish we had G4 in the state.
I know.
That's so good.
That's what I grab that, when I'm out of town. G4
that's what I always do, too.
incredible. You can get Tequila Ocho here, can't you?
Yeah, we got that one.
Tequila
We got some
Ocho's good.
Tapatios now.
Yeah.
Through Mad Vines, actually.
Yeah.
But no G4.
Yeah, Tapatios are great, and it's still the Camarena family that makes G4. It's still I think it's maybe two brothers. I'm not sure, but Tapatio's great. And they're in Yeho. They're represented. They got extra in Yeho that's amazing. It's like bourbon and tequila mixed together. I don't know if you guys have had that.
Yeah, I've had that one.
Incredible.
It's incredible.
Yeah, it's pricey, but it's great.
I think it's like $2.50 a bottle, somewhere in that range, maybe.
Around here, it would be. Yeah. But it's good though. I mean, if you're a bourbon fan and everything, it was good.
So you got any ideas for other expressions of this? Or are you sticking with the same one? Or
Definitely. So with Raicilla, the challenge there is the Raiceilleros in their history, they believe in only serving at Blanco. Okay. Because there's so much work that goes into sourcing the agave, harvesting it. The agave maximiliana that's used with this, if you see it, like Blue Weber agave is very skinny leaves you'll see sticking up. This agave maximiliana, it's got these big, thick leaves. They've got thorns on the end of them. I think the thorns are like poison tipped. I mean, it's just it's insane to harvest it. So much work, and then the soil and everything that goes into it. So they take a lot of pride in the Blanco because that's the true representation. And if you go down to Mexico, even with tequila, when you do like tequila tasting competitions there, They only judge Blancos. That's literally what they provide awards for and everything, because it's kind of the truest expression of the spirit. So, I don't want to change their culture. When I first went down there, of course, me being from my background, I was like, let's put some in barrels. I'll get you all these barrels. Let's try it out. Blah, blah, blah. And they're like, no, we don't want to do that. So, I respect the culture, and right now we back off that. I think we can do some creative things and maybe source some other blends or some very exotic ones and have like kind of a unique limited release. I think want to do that. But when I started this, the goal from the very beginning for El Viaje was to have all the different lesser known agave spirits.
Okay,
so
cool.
Raicilla is what I started with because I felt like this is a good lead out. It's not a saturated market as much as others. It's very palatable, so I can get, tequila drinkers, people that are a little scared to try something different, I can get them on this. But I want to have a mezcal, I want to have a sotol, I want to have a bacanora, I want to have a portfolio of all those is my goal. So El Viaje, my brand will then have all these expressions, and then that's where I come in as I go down, meet the producers, find the right flavor profile, find the right product, qualify the production, and just, everything, the whole infrastructure of it, if you will, and select it. And that's kind of my contribution there, and then expand the portfolios. That's really the end goal and what I want to do. How long that's going to take.
Company, basically.
Yeah. Just kind of have a brand portfolio, and there's a few out there that do it. Punta Agave, I think, was the name of it. They're one company I've seen that has one of everything. They have a bacanora, a sotol, so on and so forth. So that's what I would like to do, and especially in this, Raicilla being new, it's hard to get the volume, right? Yeah. It's hard to really get, volume nationally and all those things. It's going to take a lot of work, take a lot of investment. So if I can have some other products, and if you think about it too, like with my time, just like when I'm going to Miami this weekend or Atlanta this week, well, when I'm working with my distributors, if I had another SKU to sell them, I'm already spending that travel cost. I'm already spending that time. I'm already going in these bars and places and networking. So why not have multiple products to sell, just to help the company from a revenue standpoint? So that's the goal. But then it's, how much time do I have to then fly to Oaxaca or Puebla, wherever I want to source the mezcal from, handle those negotiations, then, the sotol, probably Chihuahua. All it's time and money. That's, that's limited in life here. At least for me. I don't know, maybe you guys have a lot.
I think it'd be cool to get a sotol going.
Yeah.
I've seen a lot of articles popping up about that lately. It's kind of booming up a little, kind of.
It is. And then, the celebrities have even tapped into that.
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I was at the festival I was at last year, which I'll do it this year. And nothing against it, it's fine. But like Lenny Kravitz has a sotol now, cool. Which I don't even think he drinks alcohol, because he's ripped and he's like 65 years old. But I mean, and that's great. He's creating exposure. But I think a sotol might be next, or a mezcal too. But if I do a mezcal, I'm going to do something unique. I want to have a mezcal that's something special. I think that's what's happened too with the mezcal industry is a lot of people were just paying not the right prices to the people in Oaxaca and kind of taking advantage of it.
That sucks.
And and so it damages the local, economy there for the people, their quality of life and so forth. So I'm very kind of sensitive on that, but I do think there's amazing mezcals and there's still room to grow in that space. But I think sotol is pretty unheard of. I love sotols. The interesting thing about sotol too, I don't know if you guys knew it, but sotol is not an agave plant. It's actually, I forget the species, but it's almost like a big asparagus is what it is. And they call it the desert spoon. That's why I don't know if you've seen that company, Desert Door. These kids out of Texas, they launched their own sotol
Is that
brand.
the blue bottle?
Yep,
Okay.
the blue ceramic bottle. So
I
these
got
kids,
some little of those when we went to Kentucky.
yeah, because they realized, well, that desert spoon, it grows all the way up into Texas too, so they can just harvest it for free. Farmers would, just give it to them. Yeah, give it to them. And they built their own distillery, which I wouldn't suggest that. I don't, if you're not a really good distiller and have a background, you can blow stuff up and have a lot of dangers with that. But they did it, and their business model worked. So, but yeah, that's my goal, is to really expand El Viaje out into other agave expressions. That's really what I want to do long term. That's the goal.
Awesome. And how many states are you in now?
So
Besides Alabama.
Yep. Right now, Alabama, Georgia, Tennessee, Florida Panhandle, and that's why hopefully South Florida soon. Get that
Mississippi?
Up. We did not do Mississippi, and I've got Mad Vines, and they could do it over there. Maybe that happens, but at the same time, you have to look at Mississippi. How much of an agave market is it, right? And how much is it? What areas, the market, etc. So maybe it's not as much. Nashville's done well.
Mississippi actually has more tequilas than Alabama has.
Like available.
Yeah.
Well, I think part of that too is it's a control state, but see,
Yeah.
they only tax it, I think, like 9 or 10%, so the markup is not as much. So again, brands are like, well, I can get my stuff on the shelf.
Yeah,
at a
because I'll
decent
drive over
price.
there and see 10 different tequilas we don't have.
Yeah.
And I was like, that sucks. I can't buy them in Alabama for my store.
I think it comes down to a price point.
I'm sure it
is
does,
really
yeah.
what it's coming down to, because a lot of brands, they have to think about what are my chances of really selling my product here. And I've seen a lot of amazing brands come through Alabama, but if it's priced too high, people aren't going to buy it. And, not everybody's rich and can afford to spend $60, $70 on a bottle.
Yeah, especially something you don't know what it is.
Yeah, to try it out, exactly. And I think the way, I'm not an expert on this, but I think once you get in the state stores, if you don't move a certain volume, then you can get kind of blacklisted, and then you got to buy your inventory back. You don't have a chance to get back in.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like, do you really want to roll the dice and make that gamble too? That can hurt your brand as
Yeah,
well.
it's almost better to keep it like you're doing, or the CGPO program to order it or whatnot.
Yeah, and I've gotten in some ABCs. Like I'm in the one in Mountain Brook, and then the one on 280 that's in Brook Highland. If you guys are familiar with it, like by the Lowe's Home Depot over there. So I've gotten in some. We got a couple to pick it up, and it's moved well. I mean, they've been moving cases, so it's kind of just slow and steady, I think, is the way to go with that.
Definitely.
Don't try to bite off more than I can chew. And then keep growing these other markets. I mean, if you look at Atlanta, Atlanta is just scratching the surface of what the potential can be there for agave. I mean, people are loving agave there, and it seems like there's an amazing restaurant that pops up almost every week over there. It's incredible. So
I guess, too, you're just one-man show, so
one-man show, that's it.
you don't have a team sending out to Texas, Kansas, all these states. It's just you.
Yeah. I mean, and that's the goal, is to get there, but it's hard. I mean, until you can get this doing enough volume, how can you have the capital to invest in that? And then also it's your baby, right? So how can you trust a brand ambassador to really push it, the way you would? To scale, you have to do that. And I know those things are coming. I'm just trying to be methodical about it. And that's this year, that's kind of where, as I've gotten into other states, I'm realizing I'm only one man. I can only be so many places. And it's getting to that point where there's going to have to be some investment, some infrastructure to be able to keep growing this thing. Yeah. And that's any business. I mean, you have to get to that point. You just hope you have a good plan for it.
Right.
Absolutely. Yeah, you can definitely tell that's your baby, and you want to take care of it, and you're not just like, hey, Matt, go sell it for me. Just do whatever.
Yeah, because once you get into some markets, and if people represent it poorly, or those main accounts have a bad taste in their mouth, there's not going back from that sometimes. And it's especially when it's your reputation and everything you've built and put your heart and soul into, you want to make sure it is represented correctly. So
Absolutely.
that's part of it. But yeah, I see Texas coming soon. New Orleans, Louisiana market, that's a drivable market. My goal has just been, okay, if I'm in Birmingham, what's everything I can cloverleaf? Like what's all these markets that I can drive to and not have to go super far.
Sure.
Conquer all that in the Southeast and then kind of move on. I spent time in New York in December testing that out. I loved it up there. An amazing, of course, amazing, mixologists and cocktail bars and things. But getting distribution is the big challenge. And that's where I compare this again to music. It's like you can be a great artist, but when you've only got, one, hit, what's
You got to get your name out there and keep it out there.
And then, they're going to say, well, okay, well, we're going to see you in 30 states instead of 5 before we'll entertain you, and this and that. And it's, it's all those things. So you may have the best product in the world, but can you get a distributor to sign you? Because with a 3-tier system, I can't sell to bars. I can't sell to people. I have to have a distributor pick me up. Yeah. And it's kind of like a record label signing you. You have to have that. So to me, that's been the biggest challenge in this whole thing. It's just
It'd be so easy if you could just sell it straight to the bars and restaurants. And
well, after prohibition, they don't allow that, unfortunately.
I was like, but for anybody, it'd be so easy because you can go somewhere and have it in the back of your truck and be like, here you go.
Yeah. Well, and it's kind of ironic too, because as a brand owner, you still have to go out there and do tastings and make these sales, right? Yeah. I mean, and I don't blame distributors. I mean, they have a million products in their portfolio. Right. When they've got Jack Daniels and all these things that they sell hundreds or thousands of
without trying.
Yeah, without trying. Why do they want to push Raicilla and have to educate? So I've got to invest my time in doing that to help grow the market for them. And I've had great, amazing partners like Mad Vines and some of the others in other states so far. But it just takes time, and again, it's just more work. So,
was it bottled in Mexico?
It is. Okay. So, and once again, to follow the legalities to be called a Raicilla, to meet the denomination of origin. Yep, it has to be bottled in Mexico, labeled in Mexico. Everything's prepared there and then shipped over here. Okay. A warehouse in Laredo. That's another reason why the Texas market makes sense. So I'm looking at Texas. I had a friend that just got back from Tulsa. I've never been in Tulsa. I don't know anything about it, but supposedly it's amazing. He loved it there. And of course, they're big into agave too. It's not far from Texas. So, so Midwest, Chicago is a great market.
Yeah.
I mean, there's lots of opportunities. It's just where do you invest your time, and then how can you've got to time it right with the distributors too.
Yeah.
'Cause sometimes they're ready to pick up new products. Sometimes they aren't.
For
You've got to
sure.
time it correctly.
I think you need to carry this, Matt.
Definitely. I definitely will.
Yeah,
I'll reach out to Ashley.
Yeah, for sure. What's your timetable as far as trying to ramp up? And
We are
all those
probably
things?
4 to 5 weeks out from opening. And I feel like I've said that for 8 weeks now. But
Well, I'm sure that's like building a house or
It
anything
is.
else, construction, and timetables get pushed out.
and
So,
we're going to be heavy in craft cocktails, so
And music.
and music, yeah.
yeah, that's
Indoor
awesome.
stage, outdoor stage, kind of like Avondale.
What's the capacity you're looking at to hold?
The whole place is roughly around 850.
Oh wow, that's
It's
awesome.
an old church.
Yeah,
It's an old church,
really.
yeah.
Oh, I got to see that. But that's great, especially here in
definitely.
college town too. And if you can get some good acts and
Yeah.
things, I mean, that's
Outside
incredible.
capacity is probably about 450, and that would be where Avondale's like 2,000. So
Yeah,
it'd be a lot different bands, but still on the way up, hopefully.
exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, but enough to draw in a crowd,
Definitely.
for sure. Yeah. Well, it seems like with some of these bands, I mean, you never know who might show up. I've seen some amazing ones in small venues in Birmingham
yeah.
because they're on their way to Atlanta, and they're just
Exactly.
like, yeah, we just want a place to kind of practice and show up for the night.
Yeah.
You just never know. So, but yeah, no, love to be involved, and thank you guys so much for having me.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because, like I said, it's a new product, it's unique. But hopefully people are learning about it and educating. That's my job. I'm trying to get out here and do that and introduce people to it. And like I said, it's something different, but it seems to be being received well, and it just needs to keep growing. That's the goal.
Awesome. I love it.
Yeah, it's 2 thumbs up for me.
You like
and,
it?
And I probably wouldn't have said that initially. I had a little.
So are you
hesitant.
a big agave spirits fan or more bourbon?
I'm
or?
bourbon.
Yeah,
for the most
yeah.
part.
I've seen some of you guys podcasts, and it seems like it's normally bourbon oriented.
is.
So I was like, oh, how
It was
would
hard
this
to
go?
find somebody that's in agave that's
Exactly.
locally,
Yeah.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
Besides being like, Ashley's been on here a few times. Like, if you're not a rep, there's no really local agave person.
No.
Yeah, yeah. Well,
So hats off to you for doing this, first of all, because
Yeah.
it takes balls.
well, yeah. Well, thank you. Let's hope it worked out right, because
I think
that
you're
can
on
go
the right
wrong
path
way.
for
I
sure, so.
appreciate it. Well, and it's to the point now where there's been so much work and all those things put in, and then it's the machine that starts rolling. So it's kind of
Yeah.
you got to keep it going.
Yeah.
now.
The
you
hard
gotta
part's
keep-
over.
Yeah, yeah. It's I just got to keep pushing forward and making the right decisions. And it's when you're a small guy, you've got to be more nimble and you've got to be smart. I can't afford as many mistakes as other people, but that's okay. You just learn as you go and try to do the right things. But no, that's great, especially if you're a bourbon fan and trying this for something different. And because I got into tequila after bourbon, I was a huge bourbon fan, still am. But I think that transition happens with people get into like the añejos and the extra añejos because it's all
Right.
barrel aged. So it kind of gives you that resemblance.
Yeah.
When you start drinking a Blanco agave spirit, it's a little different animal.
Yeah.
But you get a lot of flavor from it. You do, and then you can get the finish, and then you can kind of start to learn about it and everything. But it's very different compared to bourbon because everything in bourbon is based on aging in barrels and getting that flavor profile.
Yeah.
Pretty much.
That is true. This one, actually, tasting it, just room temperature, reminds me of the Siete Lingua Blanco.
Okay.
I don't know if you've had that one before.
I
But
have.
Because that's the additive free, so it has that real vegetative kind of taste to it.
Yep. Yep.
Kind of real similar to that.
Yep.
I think it'd be cool to do like a blind tasting with people with those two.
Yeah, yeah. That's what it was. It was funny when I was in New York back in December. I was in a spot in Brooklyn, and the gentleman that ran their bar program, he was a genius. I mean, he knew all his agave spirits, and that's what I was focused on. But he was like pulling out others, other Raicillas and doing side-by-side tastings and stuff. And I was like, this is exciting.
That's cool.
But yeah. I mean, the feedback was great. But so you never know. You never know. So what I guess flavor notes did you guys get? Anything? I'm curious what you got off of it, if you will.
It's not our forte, but we can try.
Yeah.
Usually people are like, it's 2 thumbs, it's great. They're like,
Okay, so it's just like it's good. Gotcha. I didn't know how deep you have to break it down, if you will.
but you got that like vegetable kind of vegetative, like people call it, a little citrusy,
Yep.
a little bit of pepper.
Yep.
See, and I got more of a floral type. But like you said, I love the mouthfeel on it.
Yeah.
It's got
The
it's
viscosity.
Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, it's
And I think a big thing too when people do tastings is I always tell them like get the nose on it first, because I think once you get the nose on this and you get how like
Yeah.
floral and botanical it is, it kind of tells your brain and your taste buds, okay, that's going to come through.
Right.
And then, kind of moved around and let it hit, everywhere, on the tongue and stuff, and all the flavor receptors.
Like you don't
and all
get
that.
any of that ethanol burn or anything either.
No.
It's a really good mouthfeel to it.
Yeah.
And that's when I tell people it's almost 90 proof. They get scared then too. I'm just trying to be honest with them.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it's also kind of proves a point of like you can have a higher alcohol content and still have a lot of flavor, and
Exactly.
it doesn't just burn you. A lot of times the burn is because it's just not a very good product,
Yeah,
right?
absolutely.
I mean, that's what it comes down to.
Yeah.
They didn't cut the heads and tails right, or it's just kind of poor quality, if you will.
It kind of like a mint flavor too.
Yeah.
Yep. You get some of that. You get some minerality, as they call it. Some of that, some vanilla notes every now and then. I mean, it's just
Like
it
a
kind of
little
changes. It's
vanilla
complex.
bean, minty.
And that was my thing. Like, so, all right, let me ask you guys this then, since you're bourbon fans, throw out some favorite bourbons. Let's have that conversation. Even though we're on Raicilla, I'd be curious
Let's
here.
see.
Just go top 3.
Cheers.
I'm a Still Austin guy for some, of course, we can't even get it in Alabama, but
Nothing we mentioned on this list is about here in Alabama, so just freestyle it.
I like Booker's.
Okay.
Let's see. I like Yellowstone. Been big into them lately.
You like Yellowstone? Okay. Okay.
Old Soul out of Cathead.
Okay. Okay.
Big fan of their stuff. What else do I usually drink?
You drink it all.
Yeah.
Well, the reason I ask is one of my go-tos that I was always into, that was my favorite, and that's I think kind of what I took into like when I got into tequila and Raicilla tastings and all these things. But I love E.H. Taylor. You guys ever had that?
Yep.
Yeah.
Because I felt like it had like some sweetness to it and like some citrus notes, but then like the pepper and then the vanilla. It just seemed like it was so complex with a lot going on. Viscous mouthfeel. Like I just loved how balanced it was.
Yeah.
You get a lot of bourbons and they're good, but they're kind of like 1 or 2 note
Yeah,
shows,
bland.
and then kind of one-trick ponies, if you will. And I just felt like E.H. Taylor was so complex. I loved it. So that's kind of what I wanted to do with agave spirits, and that's where I think also, anybody can grab some stuff and just put it in a bottle, right?
Right.
But like, are they really investing in the flavor profile of it and studying it and really figuring out how it mixes, how it tastes, all those things? And that's just like I was telling you guys. If I did it, I wanted it to be a work of art from the inside to the label to everything, because I want people, if they pay their money, to truly have an experience worth what they invested in.
That's what's cool. Like a few weeks ago, we had Jonathan from K. Luke. He was saying he does blends.
Yep.
And he's like, we do it at home because we'll try it in the morning, try it at lunch, try it at dinner, because your taste buds change. I'm like, I really thought about that.
Yeah,
That's pretty cool. Like an idea, like it's different. Like you said, like you might get peppery today, you might try it tomorrow and feel something different out of
So
it.
now you drinking for breakfast?
Sometimes. Research.
Look, yeah,
Exactly.
I mean, hey, things happen. Life gets stressful. You might want to do it.
But like your taste buds change throughout the day or even different days of the week. Like
Oh yeah,
you might grab this one day and be like, I'm not into that right now.
Yeah.
And grab it again and drink half of the bottle one night or something. Like
Well, that's what I'm saying. Like, I'll always, before I do a tasting, normally I'll at least pour me like a little pour and just like make sure like I'm liking the flavor and everything before I go. For some reason, I think like maybe different bottles will have different tastes, but I'll get different notes. Like sometimes the citrus will hit me, sometimes it'll be a little more peppery, et cetera. And it's just like seems different each time. And, you never know what else you had going on that day. But the consistency of it's been there, especially with the bartenders and all the mixologists that have worked with it. They've really enjoyed it, and I love it. And we're just trying to kind of spread the word and keep it going, and that's being here with you guys. Very grateful to just have this conversation also.
We appreciate. I definitely think you're on the right path. And,
Absolutely.
and we'll do everything we can to support it here. So
Yeah,
kind of
know that.
reinvigorated me for it too. So I'm gonna
Yeah.
put it on some flights at the restaurant too.
Yeah. Well, what we need to do
some
also
different-
is, and especially with yours too, like I love doing events.
Yeah,
Like
sure.
you just let me know, and I'll pull up and set up a little table and everything, and do tastings with people and talk to people about it.
yeah.
And when I do that, the goal is I'll bring, all that stuff, set all that up, and then you guys have like a special cocktail made for that night.
Yep.
So then when people like it, I'll say, well, hey, you can go to the bar and order this cocktail.
Yep.
And then it helps create revenue for everybody.
Definitely.
Because that's the thing too, is as a brand owner myself, like I have to care about the establishments, because like you guys need to be successful for me to be
Right.
successful. Like we're all kind of in this thing together.
Yep.
So I like doing events like that where, one, I get to interact with people and talk about it, but two, it
And you're
helps you sell
passionate
product.
about it.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
And I think people, they'll see that passion.
That's the one thing that I've seen that has worked. So like when I go to Nashville and do like in-store, tastings in the retail stores up there and stuff. I mean, we've had, multiple ones where we've sold out, a whole 6-pack case, which anytime you're doing a tasting, because you don't know who's coming in, you've only got a 2-hour slot to sell out 6 bottles, especially with a Raicilla that some people don't know is good. But when it's your brand and you can speak to them on why you did it, the artwork and what it means and all these things.
Makes people invested in it.
Yeah, people connect to it a lot more. So that's why I feel like, I kind of need to be out there doing this right now. And like I said, just like we were joking about being on the road, this is kind of the life I like anyways and what I chose. So I don't mind doing it.
Yeah.
I enjoy it.
You get to meet new people and interesting people. And
man. And that's the thing I love. That's what I'm saying. Just like doing this, getting to hang out with you guys, and then meet some new people in Atlanta when I'm there later this week. Meet people in South Florida, New York, just all over. You just never know who you're going to run into. And then you meet some other people who have another brand or another spirit, and we connect and kind of help each other. And it kind of becomes like a family and a community, if you will.
I agree.
And in the service industry too, that's I view that like a community. That's just like all the people in Birmingham have helped me so much. Because without that, this wouldn't have worked.
Yeah,
for sure. So.
Yeah, we can figure out a tasting one night, like do Matt's place and my place the same night or something. Figure it out.
Yeah. That's what I saw. Cool. I think it was. I can't remember what brand you had, but I think you did like a tasting one night or something.
I've done a couple with Don Julio and done one with Dread River before.
Yeah.
And people love tasting stuff for free, so then it opens the door for them to try something.
That's right. And this
try it by itself, try it in a cocktail, and then
exactly. And just like even though this doesn't have reposado and different expressions, still get them on that. Have cocktails, and you could even have a couple different cocktail options. You make it interactive for people, and they get to learn something. It's an experience for them.
Yeah,
it's like when you go out to dinner or anywhere else, you want an experience, right? That's what people want to pay for.
Exactly.
So. Absolutely.
Awesome.
Well, cheers, son.
Cheers, guys.
Cheers. I think I've drank more than any of y'all.
You got to ride.
Get all you want. This is
You are
for
driving.
you guys. There you go.
I appreciate
Awesome.
it. Thank you, Andrew.
All right. Thank you guys so much. Yeah.
That was awesome.